We're on stream. Okay, we're online. Mr. Chair, take a seat. Good morning. Telephones, please. Put them on file, please. Thank you. Then we can have a check. Good morning. Welcome again. Welcome to councillors, the council executive, and members of the public who are situated in the gallery to this public forum. Just some housekeeping before we get started. Our speakers will have 3 minutes to speak, and I will sound a 1 minute remaining warning. And then I'll give you 30 seconds after that to finish off if you haven't. At the conclusion of your talk, councillors will have the opportunity to ask questions. Speakers at council's public forum are required to abide by council's code of conduct and act with integrity, accountability and respect when addressing the council. Speakers should be aware that this public forum is live streamed and everyone in attendance must observe respectful behaviour. Speakers are advised that there are no protections from action in a council chamber, such as parliamentary privilege, and therefore speakers should exercise care excuse me, and diligence in their comments made to avoid disorderly conduct. Excuse me again. Such as insults or inferring improper motives to individuals or causing unwarranted offence or embarrassment. Should the behaviour of a speaker or members of the public gallery be considered inappropriate, then the forum should either be suspended or abandoned and the offending speaker be asked to leave the chamber. In layman's terms, let's treat each other with respect, because I will not be tolerating poor behaviour. Thank you. Mr. Rob Sobolewski, would you like to come to the podium, please, and make the presentation?
Through Mr. Mayor, it's within public health orders that speakers can, when addressing the meeting, remove their masks.
Thank you, Chair. Councillors, on behalf of the Bull Sobolewski family, we object to the feedlot expansion. We are the 5th generation of the Bull farming families that have farmed in this area for over 150 years. And this is the greatest plight on the region we have encountered today. The putrid odours and foul stench that are emitted from the feedlot are a grave health concern for young families who live in this region. As a grandfather, I am worried to my grandchildren's developing respiratory systems when staying with us. The foul smell that now invades our community is also affecting those that are elderly, who are now afraid to go outside from fear of an asthma attack or a respiratory failure. Countless complaints and reports to the EPA have been made from the neighbouring community living within a 15-kilometre radius of the feedlot because of the odour being so severe and offensive in nature. The impact is the feedlot is increased by the proposed 140% from initial approval will be devastating. The current EIS environment report is flawed as it grossly underestimates impact. The expansion will actually generate a staggering 360,000 kilograms of cow shit a day. This will pose a significant health and environment. Okay, thank you, Chair. This will pose a significant health and environment risk. We urge councillors to defer approval of the expansion of the Conagra feedlot.
1 minute.
As it is critical for councillors to visit the feedlot site to make an informed decision and to ask why we, as a community and ratepayers of council, still continue to have our lives disrupted by the disgusting odours emanating from the feedlot. The expansion of the feedlot will drain vital resources, impact on health and destroy the community. Let's not be accountable for this. I trust the council will make the informed, responsible decision to block the expansion of the feedlot and secure the future of Conago's legacy. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Sobolewski. I'd like to invite, does the council have any questions for Mr. Sobolewski? Thank you. Clapton.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Rob, you mentioned countless complaints to the EPA over a period of time. Do you know if any of those have manifested themselves into misdemeanors at all, or has the feedlot been held accountable for any breaches of their existing licensing requirements at all?
We'll just clarify, I've got 2 hearing aids, and what you said afterwards, manifested complaints, or it was a bit...
Have manifested themselves in a manner that they've actually been breaches of their current licensing and regulatory requirements?
Well, I think that's a question possibly to the Environmental Services Manager, because it's licensed by the EPA. I'm not privy. Previously, when we've addressed council, some of that information has been considered in potential confidence, so they wouldn't normally communicate to us as individuals, I would think.
Through Mr. Mayor, see if Mrs. Sutton, the Manager of Development Services, is aware of any complaints that have been upheld by the EPA.
In relation to complaints, the EPA is the appropriate regulatory authority, so the complaints go direct to them, not council. We don't have any jurisdiction in those because the EPA licensed the activity. We do believe the knowledge that we have was the moving of the compost came about as a direct result of an EPA complaint to the EPA in relation to the odours. Other than that, we are not privy to day-to-day complaints. We're not the authority that deals with them, so we don't get those direct to us.
So just responding that maybe an opportunity for council to pursue the EPA to just see if anything has occurred.
A question, Mr. Sobolewski. Have you ever spread any of the manure on your own paddocks? Have you ever spread any of the manure as a fertiliser on your own paddocks?
As in from the Conago feedlot?
That's correct.
No.
Thank you.
Mr. Sobolewski, when in the year does it become the worst smell? So like at what time of year do you find the smell is at its worst, at its peak?
There are no specific times, and possibly Donald can answer that. Okay. Donald may cover that in that he's really monitored, the wind direction and that more so than myself, so councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Sobolewski. Is there any more questions, Mr. Sobolewski? No. Thank you, councillors. We'll move on to our next speaker, Mr. Donald Bull. Thank you, Mr. Bull.
Morning, Council. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to address you all. I wish you all the best future as well. As probably Rob covered, and yes, I'm against the expansion of the feedlot, but I've lived on this property all my life since 1953. Anne and I are in the unfortunate position to be the nearest dwelling next to the feedlot. We built our home in 1980 on a sand hill on the north side a beautiful spot amongst the pine trees. And we basically built what we thought was our dream home. We designed it so all the living areas, lounge rooms, all the bedrooms, they all face to the north. We've got French doors, verandas, swimming pool out the front north, we've got tennis court on the north side. And now we get these putrid odours that come up our centre. It's very difficult to keep them out of our house. People say, shut your windows, close your doors, try all that. It's when the really offensive odours come in, it's very difficult to keep them out of your house. I'll just give you a little bit of background to the feedlot. Colin Bell called us, and I would assume about 6 years ago, I'm not exactly sure. And he said, come down to the homestead at Wollongong, I want to have a talk to you, which we did. He said, we're thinking of putting in a feedlot in order to drought-proof ourselves. And at that time, it was a drought period. And obviously being surrounding farmers, I thought, well, yep, that's all fair enough. And he said, we want to drought-proof ourselves so we can run our sheep and cattle and keep our numbers at a good level. Made a lot of sense. Unfortunately, what he didn't tell me was this business is basically run independently of AFA. Anyway, it seems to be all outside stocks run on the feedlot. Since the inception of the feedlot, our environment has dramatically changed. I would have made at least 50 plus calls to the EPA for the very offensive odours. I don't bring for the mild whiffs that we get. That's over a period of time. The second expansion, this is the second expansion recently, which will now treble in the cattle numbers. The original DA said that encroaching upon neighbours, odours will not encroach upon you, and certainly this hasn't been the case. Odours come in early evening as a rule, just when you get home to enjoy yourself after a hard day's work. It's severely affected our living conditions, and if things don't change, we will certainly be, not finished. 3 minutes, 30 seconds. So, if things don't change, we are now talking about relocating. How sad is that? Just on the odours, it's a north wind that gets us every time. So, someone, you asked the question about.
But when do you find that you have those smells the worst?
It's a gentle north wind in the evenings as a rule, usually 12 kilometres or less, and they can last well into the evening, midnight. Well, I go to bed at 10, so that's still there. Occasionally you get them in the morning, but the evening is when the inversions sit over you like a mushroom.
Thank you, Mr. Bull. Do we have any questions from the council? Thank you. Ms. Bull.
Mr. Ball, you didn't, I think that you skipped a little part of your speech there when you were talking about when it originally started, about 6 years ago, when you went to visit the neighbourhood and have a discussion about.
He asked us to explain this.
So I think that's where you may have skipped a little bit of information. You were okay with the initial expansion because of obviously the situation.
We agreed everything the DA will let us explain to us to drought-proof the property.
So the increase at that point in time was, or was he planning to do originally?
They were planning, sorry?
Yeah, so the expansion originally, when you first approached you.
Oh, that was the original DA before, when it was, I think, 4,000 or 5,000 head of cattle. And then the second one took it up to 8, and now we're talking 12. But initially, Colin Bell stated to us it's for their own stock.
Thank you.
Any more questions, councillor?
Donald, how receptive to the EPA been to your complaints? Do they look into them?
That's a good question, because the EPA have been very informative, and I've had lots and lots of conversations with them, and I've learned a lot. Unfortunately, and I hate to say it, COVID's really impeded them coming in to assess the odours. They have come to our property. You've got to get the right winds, and you've got to get it at the right time. And they had a stage where they couldn't come after 5 o'clock. They couldn't speak to you when they're on the property. So basically, I haven't seen any EPA for a good while. But look, over the phone, I've had a working relationship with them, and they talk a lot. And inversions are more common in the winter, a lot more common in the winter than at this time of the year. And sometimes we go through a period and think, oh, they've got their management right at last. And then you'll get a series of defensive overs come up. So I just never know. The EPA and Mario, they're obviously the escape. Winter time with heavier atmosphere is a lot worse. Apparently living on a sandhill, overs roll like a fog and they multiply. And that's why I think we really get it a lot worse than a lot of other people do. But we are the as well.
Thank you. Well, I have a question for you, Teresa. I have one question for you, Mr. Hall. Have you ever spreading with manure as a fertiliser?
Yes, I have. James gave me some manure to try
And where was that spread?
on the south side of our house, along on the pastures.
Thank you.
Then there was no odour from that whatsoever.
From the
And it
manure?
spread out. Once, a few hours later, you couldn't smell
No, you've answered the question, thank you. I'd like to introduce Mrs. Clayton Patrick to speak today. Thank you, Mrs. Patrick.
Morning, everyone. I'm going to go quite quickly because I've got about 1,000 pages of the environmental impact statement to summarise in 3 minutes. So, thank you, Madam Mayor, Mr. Chairperson, councillors, new staff. As Mr. Chairperson has introduced me, I'm Claire Fitzpatrick of Progressive Rural Solutions. I was engaged by AFA to prepare the environmental impact statement, which was launched as part of the application. To give you some very brief background and summary, AFA identified the potential to construct additional pens within the existing feedlot site to house both cattle and sheep and increase the operation size to a maximum of 12,000 standing cattle units or their equivalents. As you will have seen through the information provided to yourselves, there has been detailed assessments that have been undertaken across 18 months to identify, review and plan to mitigate any identified impacts to the environment and surrounds during both the construction and the ongoing operation of the activities at the site in a larger scale. This included significant and detailed over assessments. As you will have seen, the proposal identifies to construct 33 pens, which include earthworks, to build raised pens for drainage to assist with reduction of odours and reduce wet pen surfaces, construct fences, shade, troughs and tanks, and proposes to source the earth from an adjoining storage dam, increasing its size by 40 megalitres. This includes, we also included the identification as required of mass mortality management. Feedlot is required to meet and operate within and up to 14 standards, guidelines, licence, approvals, conditions and regulatory requirements as part of its design, construction and the ongoing operation. Many of these require extensive annual reports and audits, of which AFA has not had a single compliance issue ever identified. As part of the current operation and extensive and detailed odour assessments by both the EPA and an independent odour specialist have occurred, and these results have never identified an offensive odour ever being emitted from the site. Odour complaints are taken very seriously, and AFA has gone to significant lengths to independently assess and verify any complaints made relating to the site. Management and staff at the Conago Feedlot consider potential odour emissions as a high priority management activity and undertake daily assessments at and adjoining the site. To summarise for you, some of the economic benefits that will be derived as part of this extension, a further $3.7 million will be spent in addition to the $15 million originally spent at the site. They will employ a significant amount of local contractors, increase their spending by 50% within the local economy, which includes sourcing livestock, feed and utilisation of local business, increase its ongoing employment at the site by 8 to 10 staff, increase utilisation of the operation of grain storage and resourcing facilities in Denali and Blighty and the outsourcing of cattle within the area, continue support a local area, including the Conago School Pumpkin Program and provision of cattle to the Conago Camp Drive Club, And super importantly, it will increase its current turnover from 55 million to between 80 and 85 million dollars if extended, which strengthens a substantial number of local businesses and connected community resources.
Thank you.
So I'd like to ask if anyone has any questions. James has elected not to speak, but is more than happy to also answer any of your questions at the same time. James is a feedlot manager and is involved in the day-to-day running of the operation. So if I can't answer it, I might point some of it to James because he's very much going to be the one that any of the regulatory requirements he's in charge of operating. So I won't have either to take the question.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from the council?
I've got a few, sorry. So going through what was listed, now I couldn't find anywhere where we've listed the wind direction in the actual report, factoring that in for consistency. But I'm also wondering, when you talk about like financial gain, specifically what businesses will it impact in town, how will it benefit like specific businesses? And then we've got infection risk as well. So we've had a couple of outbreaks at QFE in the last 6 months in the district. What have we got in place to mitigate that risk and other biohazards there? So,
Excuse me, councillor, they your two questions.
yes.
Yes, could we just answer one of those at a time?
No problem.
That's fine. So if you'd like to have, I'm happy to address probably the wind direction first. So I noted in there
Councillor Betts, can you hear us? Yep, Councillor Fogarty? Yep, that's fine, looks like. We seem to have lost internet connection in the whole building, but it's now come back online, so happy to make sure that you're still. Still online. One is one technology councillors. All good to go.
Thank you. Patrick, would you like to resume?
Thank you. Yes, so just to probably conclude the question in relation to the wind direction and air assessments which relate feed into the modal modelling. I suppose there's currently at CalPath TAPM, which are a whole range of environmental assessment suites that the EPA requires use of to provide the assessments that are fed into the environmental impact statement. And the results of those, as we've seen in the EIS, have indicated that they do not expect any impact to adjoining residences.
Thank
you. Second question.
So specifically, what businesses, like how will the expansion actually impact the town? How will it?
I skipped it because I was trying to shorten the conversation. So multiple. A significant amount of adjoining properties. So I think James, we were talking about this only yesterday. So pretty much from north of Deniliquin across pretty much the entire Edward River Shire area is the Kanoko feedlot sources grain, hay, silage, cattle. They utilise local farmers to background cattle to prepare them to go into the feedlot. Local machinery repair businesses, ongoing earthworks, pipe connection, plumbing, electrical, transport companies to deliver grain, hay, silage. They store grain at both Blighty and in Deniliquin, so there's an ongoing agreement with local businesses to operate and lease that. Myself, I'm local to Deniliquin. So yeah, there's. Do we see any, James?
Just here, livestock transport, obviously serious part of it, but
Animal husbandry.
yeah, I think you know, the Bells have done a terrific job with all the construction out there, but it's they have sourced all local contractors, and I'll continue to do that. It's very supportive of the local areas. So.
Which I can say, as an independent person who works on quite a few of these types of projects, that probably has come at a premium to AFA, like that they probably paid more than they would have if they had outsourced to other companies. So yeah, I know through the tendering process when I was with Victory Irrigation prior to this, so leading into the initial construction of the feedlot, they did certainly, the selection criteria for the construction was heavily based on local contractors.
Thank you. Patrick, any more questions?
Is it key fever? Yeah.
Does the buyer have an infection control process? So.
Yeah, no, that's a fair question too. So always, I know we had to address this. It's a very small part of the environmental impact statement, but obviously there's a biosecurity plan that the feedlot has to operate as part of their regulatory requirements as well. So all staff at feedlots and who work with animals intensively, I mean, anyone really should be vaccinated, but the feedlot staff has a requirement to be vaccinated for Q fever. I don't know, you wouldn't ask any of the contractors whether they're vaccinated, do you? I'm assuming it's just one of those things you would make the assumption that any contractors that are delivering cattle to the site would be vaccinated because they're, yeah, so, and then other than that, I don't know who else to answer that question.
Okay, what are the risk mitigations that we have involving actually bringing new cattle and sheep in that they're not going to come in with an infection?
Oh, yes.
Because that is what's actually occurred.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, you can address this one.
So all livestock that enter the feedlot, the basic routine is we buy cattle directly off farmers, and we take them to a backgrounding facility, and that is in the Riverina, all parts of Victoria, southern New South Wales. So those livestock are they're pre-vaccinated, for MH and IVR, which is a respiratory disease. And they also get their 5-in-1 shot. They also get a drench, and they're treated for worms, lice, etc. All identified in a feedlot program system. And the aim is for backgrounding that we're acclimating those cattle. So we're putting a group of cattle together to all get to know one another and socialise. So therefore, when we bring them into the feedlot, then they get their booster shots and they move forward. So feedlot health, like animal health, is number one priority for many reasons. We've got obviously very concerned about animal welfare. Secondly, it's a massive profit loss if we start having sick animals. We have a full-time vet that works for OFO feedlot, and they are bovine vets. They only look after feedlot cattle, and they are at our call 24/7, and they're there at least once a month for a monthly review, go through a complete health check. And then beyond that, on a day-to-day basis, 365 days a year, we've got pen riders there that are very capable horse people that ride through the current 82 pens that are there now. They monitor and take out any sick animals, whether it's respiratory, whether they've got a bad eye, whether they're lame. Those cattle come to our hospital, which is on site. They're treated, put into the hospital, monitored, and then they return back into their own pen generally within 4 days. So animal health and disease risk is paramount to us.
You also have arrival pens, like in dedicated areas.
So, yeah,
So when you come into the people, you're in an isolated arrivals dedicated area, so that they can be monitored before they're extended into the existing rest of the federal areas.
Thank you, Mr. Sage. I do have a question for Mr. Sage. Regarding manure, do you spread manure on your own farms?
yeah.
And odour issues?
No other issues with, obviously, spreading manure straight away. Yes, you're cleaning it out, but then it's incorporated in the soil within, I think it's 3 hours. So it's basically the machines putting it out, there's a power going in the water, or it's being irrigated. So we use roughly 70% of the manure, 20,000 tonnes a year, goes on Winnick itself for crop production, and we do supply a couple other local farmers around the area, and they supply them with corn silage. So we give them some manure. I sell the manure, and then in return they grow it.
Thank you, Mr. Sage. Do we have any more questions, please? Councillor. Thank you, Councillor Fawcett.
So a question in regards to the evidence that the residents are actually complaining about. Have they been identified to a particular activity that is causing them to happen? Is it away from what farm? Those activities
Well,
eliminated?
in the short, no, there's not really any one thing that would be identified on a daily basis. Weather permitting, we are cleaning pens every day of the week. And if it happens to be wet during the week, and that we still keep any day that we can clean pens, we're cleaning pens. So that's in an interval of around about 60 days. It's a bit like a pain in the heart. We start at one and go to the end and come back to the beginning. All of the manure now is pushed up in a pen today, trucked out and taken basically nearly 10 kilometres away off-site or going to the farm where it's being spread. So there's not really any one thing that you can pinpoint that makes it worse. It's all about keeping on top of pen maintenance not letting that lag behind, so we just have to keep pushing forward. I have the responsibility of keeping my manure depth below 50 mils and below, and that's what I have to do.
Thank you, Mr. Said. Do you have any more questions, Councillor? No? Well, God, I'd just like to conclude the public forum. I'd like to thank very much Mr. Sobolewski, Mr. Bull, Mr. Fitzpatrick and Mr. Sage. The behaviour this morning was exemplary and quite in tune of the room that we're in. So I thank you very much. I'd just like to declare this public forum closed at 9:25, 9:24. And I'm very conscious of time, and we'll just move straight into the council meeting for today. Thank you. Yeah. Good morning. I'd like to declare this meeting open at 9:25. I'd like to welcome councillors, council executive, council staff, and also members of the public. I'm just going to read out a rights agreement statement. Edward River Council wishes to advise members of the public that council meetings will be recorded and will be available after each meeting on council's website. All care will be taken to maintain the privacy of those in attendance. However, as a visitor in the public gallery, your presence may be recorded. By remaining in the public gallery, it is assumed that your consent is given in the event of your image being broadcast. This includes any filming by television cameras, if in attendance, and is approved by the General Manager or Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Manager. As we have Lady Mary Betts and Councillor Fogarty on live stream, and they may go off live stream to check out the minutes and the agenda for today.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Chair, if I can, just for councillors Betts and Fogarty, if you wish to participate in the meeting, we're not going to necessarily have the video on the screen. So if you just come off mute and declare that you wish to participate in the debate and or vote, so we can go back to the video monitoring. At the moment, we have the minutes of the meeting up on the screen, so the video is hidden. Just sticking with the thumbs up, you understand?
Yep. Welcome to country. I would like to acknowledge that we are here today on the land of the Wamba Parapai people. I would like to acknowledge and pay my respects to past Aboriginal elders, the present Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who reside within this area and their future generations. The statement of purpose. I've come here as a councillor free to represent the views of the community in considering the matters before us today, to vote in a matter I consider to be in the best interest of the community, and to observe the code of conduct and respect the rule of the chair and the views of my fellow councillors. Are there any apologies or applications for leave of absence? No, it appears that we do not have any. I'll just move on to confirmation of the minutes. The minutes for the ordinary council meeting held on the 2nd of December 2021. Could I have someone to move that, please?
To the former councillors for the 2nd of December. I think it was.
So is councillor Fogarty and Lady Mary Spence, would you be able to move the motion? And
I
you
can,
have a second,
I can move
please.
the motion.
Councillor, can you hear me, councillor Fogarty? I think you're on mute, Pat.
Yes, I can. Yes, I can. What was that?
If you'd like to move that, councillor Fogarty, could you raise your hand? Thank you. And if you'd like to second that motion, could you please raise your hand? Thank you.
Just want to do a sound check to the two online, please. Can't seem to hear you at the moment.
Can you hear me, Phil? I can hear you clearly.
Yeah, we couldn't hear you before, so thank you. We've just made a slight adjustment.
Councillor Fogarty?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, we had a mover for councillor Fogarty and seconded by Lady Mary Spence. Yeah. Thank you. And same with the minutes for the extraordinary meeting held on the 11th of January 2022. Could we have a mover? No. Thank you, councillor Peterson, and thank you, councillor Fogarty. All those in favour? Thank you. That motion carried. Disclosure of conflicts or interests. Do we have a disclosure of interest?
Yes, I filled in the form, Chair. I believe they're non-pecuniary interests in both those items 9.6 and 9.7.
Thank you, councillor Birch. It's noted that we've got the necessary that information. Right, let's move right along.
Sorry, Mr Deputy Mayor.
Yes.
I'd seek to move that council suspend business in accordance with the Code of Meeting Practice and bring forward the consideration of agenda item 9.7 for DA 74/21, the Canango feedlot extension, just to the benefit of the public gallery. We might want to see us wade through a lot of procedural motions.
I'm happy to accept that, councillor Fowler.
I'll just thank you, councillor. I'd like to amend that slightly to include item 9.8. Again, and that will allow Mr. Sutton to move on to the busy schedule for the day.
We all didn't love.
It's just 9.7 and 9.8.
Right.
Thank you. Do we have a second? No. Okay, very good. Thank you, councillor. All those in favour?
Aye.
Motion carried. Right, let's move on to 9.7. I'd like to introduce Mrs. Sutton, who will be introducing the item. Mrs. Sutton is the Manager of Development Services for the Edward River Council. Thank you, Mrs. Sutton.
Development application, the report that details the development application 7421, which was received by council on the 20th of July 21. The applicant proposes to expand the existing mixed species feedlot operation with a maximum of 8,000 cattle or 15,000 sheep, or 12,000 cattle and no sheep, or a mixed species capped at 12,000 standard cattle units at any one time. The development is designated development and integrated development, with general terms of approval being required from Water New South Wales for water supply work and EPA for pollution control and environmental management. GTAs have been supplied by both Water New South Wales and the EPA. The application is also referred to a number of statutory authorities, and their comments are detailed in the report. The application is based on public exhibition on 2 occasions, initially for a 28-day period, with site notice, extensive neighbourhood notification and local paper and website. And again, when further information is received, placed on exhibition for a further period of 28 days. 4 submissions were received, 3 being objections and 1 in support. So the recommendation we have for the report is that the application be approved, the expansion of the existing feedlot at Canogo Feedlot site as detailed in the report, and subject to the following reasons. The proposed development is permissible within the zone under the Canogo LEP Plan 2013 and complies with the provisions of the local environmental planning instrument. Proposed development demonstrates capacity on the site for the proposed expansion of the livestock numbers, and the proposed development, subject to the imposition of conditions, is unlikely to have any unreasonable impact on the environment, and where an adverse impact has been identified, the appropriate conditions have been imposed to mitigate the effects. There's also a recommendation that the imposition of the conditions, as detailed in the attachment 1 of the officer's report, be a part of the recommendation and the approval process, and the determination process. Sorry.
Thank you. So, do we have any questions for Mrs. Sutton? Can I please have a mover in motion? Thank you, Councillor. Recommendation that
So,
this be approved.
to Deputy Mayor, I'll move the recommendation as written. And, you get a second roll. Speak on it.
Thank you. We have a seconder. Councillor Clapham. Thank you. Would you like to speak to the motion, please, Councillor Tom?
Thanks. Mayor, yes, there are 2 sides to this. One, I don't believe there are planning grounds that we can refuse it on. But secondly, I can understand that close neighbours may have a problem with it, and so I think we should be supportive of the closer residents that if there are problems, we perhaps get EPA involved, because the EPA have all the power in this council. I don't believe they have any power, do they?
The council has power to ensure that the development conditions are adhered to. However, we don't have any power to take any action in regard to regulatory or, legislative action. Yes. Powers are transferred to the EPA.
Yeah. So yeah, I believe it would be good development, subject to not causing odour problems to the neighbours.
Councillor Clapham, would you so like to speak for information?
I would like to speak in favour of motion, but also in deference to the neighbours. It's a difficult decision. Council has an obligation to
support for developed businesses. We're not in the process of casting judgment on which businesses are appropriate or inappropriate. In this case, it appears that the development has met all of the stringent requirements placed upon it by the state regulatory authorities, and it's our responsibility to judge it on the merit of what is presented to us. And on that basis, I support the motion and am cognizant of those people that are in proximity to the development. Please understand where the council sits with regards to this matter. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Dutton. Would anyone like to speak against the motion? Well, I just thank you, Councillor Booth.
Sorry, I feel like, although you've had a look at this, you've met what's required at the moment within the EPA and everything, to plan forward, it's great to have the models, but for what's actually going to occur, we can't confirm that. I know methane recapturing and everything is not mentioned in that report. While we can't control that, in the interest of global warming and in the interest of us being a forward-thinking area, we have to look at what will happen within this community. We've had massive issues with droughts, we've had issues with soil erosion, we've had issues with dust storms in the past. And I'd just like to know I'd like to be able to see some things that will offset that, what will occur, especially for the excess stock, which will of course increase more dust. While it's been found to not be an issue here, I haven't seen a report that's factored in the drought and the ongoing issues that we will have with the soil erosions.
Thank you, Councillor Pearson. Would anyone like to speak for the motion? Any further against?
I would like to speak against the motion, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
I would like to suggest that council defer a decision on this application. I recognise that significant work has been gone into by the staff who do a very diligent job in this regard, but I believe it would be incumbent upon each of the council members and hopefully as a whole to visit the site so that they can get a first-hand view of the issues that are prevailing. There are significant issues. The EPA in their report has noted that this is a considerable proposal increase and could result in frequency of odour impacts upon neighbours. And I would like to suggest that council make a visit to the site so that they can make a fully informed decision before passing judgment on this application.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Fogarty is foreshadowing a motion to defer it if this one is lost.
Yes, I am.
Thank you, Councillor Fogarty.
It still remains, through Mr. Mayor, it still remains the motion on the table. And if this one is carried, then there won't be any further motions. But if it is lost, those vote against more than 4, then Councillor Fogarty, I think, would be able to then foreshadow her procedural motion to defer. So you can see any further speakers on the motion.
So supporting Councillor Fogarty.
No, actually, that's just foreshadowed. It's not a motion on the table.
Thank you, Mr. Starr. Any speakers for the motion?
Given no further speakers, Councillor Connell, the mover of the motion, has a right to reply.
Thank you, Councillor.
So this is the one. Mr. Deputy Mayor, I'd be happy to amend my recommendation. So councillors, so we ensure that there is due diligence in this, that this be deferred to the next council meeting and the council have a trip to have eyes on the proposed development.
Through Mr. Mayor, what we have on the table at the moment is a motion to approve the DA that should be voted for before any further business is considered. Now, if it is lost, that if those people do not, the majority of councillors don't vote for it to be approved, as is the motion on the table, then there can be a further motion, procedural motion to defer it, but we must consider the item that's the motion that's in front of the council at the moment. And that is the motion moved by Councillor Connell that the recommendation as written.
Through you, Mr Deputy Mayor, if the motion is lost, will there be a problem bringing it up again in the month? Being if it isn't there, something with rescission motions.
Through Mr Mayor, I'm not sure where we were at on in terms of timeframes, but I think it's gone for quite some time. So there is an opportunity for the applicant, if it's gone over the statutory timeframes, to consider it a deemed refusal and therefore appeal that outcome. Perhaps Mr Sutton can explain where we're at in the timeframes. But in terms of if there is no appeal, there is certainly nothing preventing it from coming further to council in a month's time.
So the development application was received on the 20th of July. There's a number of statutory referrals and stop the clock periods. I can't tell you right now the exact stop the clock, which I would have to go back through and see where we were up to, but there is that process that can be deemed refusal, and then that has to be challenged. So that brings a whole new realm of things that would go through legal proceedings rather than through council. So it's generally not a thing that's done, because it probably could result in higher delays than this. So, but that would be up to the applicant, and I would assume we probably have exceeded the 40 days. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Sutton. Are there no further speakers?
I'm confused. Motion. Well, if through you, perhaps you could, the general manager can explain exactly the procedures if it gets voted for or voted against.
Point of order, Mr Chairman. I believe the mover of the motion can modify the motion before it is before it is voted upon. And as the mover of the motion has indicated that he would be happy to include the delay of the decision as part of the motion. Therefore, I believe the motion could be voted upon.
Bruce, in terms of the point of order, if I could just respond. Yes, there is provision for the mover of a motion to modify the motion during the debate, but a motion to defer an item for consideration by the council is a procedural motion and substantially different from the motion that's on the table. Therefore, my recommendation is that the motion proceeds to a point of voting, and then if it is lost, then Councillor Fogarty can move the procedural motion to defer the matter.
Thank you, Councillor Stone. Mr. Stone. Excuse me. Put forward the motion. Would anyone like to? All those in favour?
So we have to do a.
That's correct.
It's a division. We must have a division. So your individual vote will be recorded.
Councillors keep their hands up, so the chair can read out those who are voting for. So we're around the
Councillor Birch. Councillor Betts.
For.
Lady Mary's Betts. My apologies. Councillor Thorns. Councillor Clapham. Or Councillor Fellows. Yes. Or against. We have Councillor Moore, Councillor Connell, Councillor Fogarty, and Councillor Betts. Motion is carried. Thank you, councillors. We'll move straight on to item.
First item of business
Yes, great baptism of fire. We'll move straight into item 9.8, which is a development services report. This will be introduced by the River Council Director of Infrastructure, Mr. Dalzell. Excuse me, Mr. Stone. Could the public members of the public go and
They're welcome to leave it.
Welcome to leave. Yes.
Welcome to stay as long as you like as well. Riveting name.
Did you want the deck? Welcome everyone to council. Thanks so much for your consideration and time.
Thank you.
Yes. Thank you so much.
I'm on a state there. Thank you. Item 9.8, the development services report, will be presented by Mr. Sutton. Thank you.
So development services report is the monthly report on development services department activities. For December, the report is provided for information as detailed in the attachments.
Through Mr. Chair, just councillors note that DA 124/21 Seniors Living Precinct was applied for on the 3rd of December 21, still under consideration. It's one that councillors may be interested in.
Thank you, Mr. Sutton. Does anyone wish to move either the recommendation or a different motion? No. Thank you. Can we have a mover, please? Thank you, Councillor Collins, and a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Foreman. Anyone would like to speak for the motion? Against? Can we, I'd like to put forward for the motion. Put the motion. All in favour? Against? Carried.
Yes.
Councillor Connell, would you like to move that we go back to our normal order of business?
Just Deputy Mayor, I'd like to move that we resume the ordinary business of council as outlined in the agenda.
Thank you. The seconder for that?
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Okay, we'll go back to item 9, report to council. Item 9.1, resolutions to council. General Manager of the River Council, Mr. Stone, would you like to introduce item 9.1, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a monthly report from the organisation, just outlining those resolutions of the council, those decisions of the council that have been made, and shows an opportunity for the councillors to receive an update on their implementation and for the community to receive as well. Recommendations to note the report.
Mr. Stone. Do we have a mover? Thank you, Councillor Forbes, and a seconder. Councillor Connell, thank you. I'd like to, anyone like to speak for this motion? Anyone against? We have a vote.
Can I ask-
Please. Sorry.
Can I ask a question about one of the matters, please?
Certainly.
In relation to 171, the sale of the industrial land, the Sale Yards Road, It says contract signed, deposit submitted, closed. Do we actually have a settlement date for that one?
Explain, Meredith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Chair, and thank the Mayor for a question. Yes, I'm happy to say that the contracts have been signed and a deposit has been submitted. We haven't, probably could keep that open a little bit longer, just so that the council can continue to monitor it. I haven't received the final signed contract back yet, but so it's still not entirely closed, and so I don't have a settlement date to give to the council at this point. But I'll certainly take that on notice and inform the councillors via this report and also informally once it happens.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Stone. We have questions. Are there any more questions? We have a mover, please, with the motion. Oh, we have. Yeah, can we put the motion, please? So all those for the motion? Thank you. All those against? Carried. Look, nearly 10 o'clock. Would council like us to have a 5-minute break? Adjournment?
Always.
Or would you like to keep going? Yeah, just adjourn just for 5 minutes.
I think I'll have tea. I'll have to get a cup of tea.
Thank you, councillor.
Well,
Do you
Before we start the meeting, Mr. Chair, just wait for the two councillors to come back online. Here at the moment, Councillor Betts.
I'm here, I can hear you.
Thank you.
I didn't get any morning tea, but I'll be okay. It's all right, thank you.
I have some for you. Fine.
Ah, beautiful. Thanks, love. You've always got my back.
We are live streaming at the moment, just to let you know. Councillor Stokes.
Thank you, councillors. I'd like to go to the next item on today's agenda. It's item 9.2, Investments and Reserves Report for December 2021. It's on page 14 of your agenda. Notes, I'd like to present or ask the Director of Corporate Services, Ms Campbell, to introduce the item.
Thank you. We've provided council with the investment reserve report for both November and December 2021. Typically, this is a standard monthly report that you will get reporting on our investment performance for the month prior. You're getting 2 months worth today because there wasn't an ordinary council meeting in December. As at the 31st December 2021, council had 45.9 million cash and term deposits. Total investments for the past 12 months has ranged between 44 million and 49 million. And we're using a company called Imperium to help us manage our investment portfolio, which we continue to see a benefit of. So from the period May to December 2021, it's given us a benefit of approximately 24,000. So we're asking council today to note and receive the December report of investments totaling 45.9 million, inclusive cash at the bank for day-to-day operations. We want you to note the actual interest earned for the month of November, which was 21,880, and December, which was 25,944, and to note the accrued interest that was earned but not yet received in November, which was 92,181, and for December, 108,000. Any questions?
Thank you, Ms Campbell. Any questions? Councillor.
Move the recommendation. Deputy Mayor.
Do we have a seconder? Councillor Moore. Thank you. I put the motion. I'd like to put forward the motion. All those for? Aye. All those against? The motion. Right, let's move along to item number 3, 9.3, which is the nomination of councillors to committees. This is on page 48, and this will be introduced by Ms Campbell.
Mr. Mayor, this is a general item that councils must move generally every year. But certainly once a term to nominate councillors onto various committees that are under the auspices of council or councillors are members of council staff. Now, there has been a bit of discussion outside of the meeting around those councillors who wish to participate in certain committees. And we've managed to try and capture all of that onto a spreadsheet that is in front of you at the moment. So it'd be my recommendation, Mr. Chair, that the council moves into committee as a whole, so that essentially we can suspend standing orders and have a general discussion around who's going to be on which committee. And after that has all been sort of decided informally, then we can move back into and adopt standard procedures to adopt the motion of those all those people on committee. Thank you.
I'd like to move that we suspend standing orders and move into a whole committee of council.
Second on that, councillor Peterson, thank you.
I put the motion that there is no debate.
Also,
All those against? Carried.
Mr. Chair, we're now in committee of the whole. It's generally those strict requirements about timeframes and standing up and so forth are no longer appropriate, no longer necessary, should I say. So it might be worthwhile that we capture those we already have on the various committees. So you're happy to read those up?
Yes, so the first up is the Community Safety and Crime Prevention Advisory Committee. We have Mayor Bex on that one. Now the next one, which is the Dillington-Conago Area Local Emergency Management Committee, we actually don't need a councillor on that. I believe Councillor Fogarty had nominated, but the councillor is not required for that committee, so we can take that one off. The New South Wales Rural Firefighting, Rural Fire Service Liaison Committee requires 2 councillors. However, we have.
So do you want us, could I just ask, when you say that, do you want us to say we're interested or not? I'm interested in that, yeah.
So just a little bit of background, that means twice a year, March and September, but sort of before the fire season and then after the season. Involves some councils that are in the zone, sort of from Armidji and from Murray, very much led by the RFS.
Yes.
So with an interest in rural fire service generally, it's a pretty good committee. I think.
Just in terms of Councillor Fogarty, I'm not sure if you heard that around the Emergency Management Committee, that it actually doesn't need a councillor on that. But there is the one that we just spoke about. I haven't got it in front of me. What's the?
It is the New South Wales Rural Fire Service Liaison Committee, Mid-Murray Zone. So,
Councillor Fogarty, would you like to attend that one instead? Just on mute.
That's fine. Yep. Although on the minutes as they came out was requesting for a councillor also.
yeah, we do apologise, Councillor Fogarty, that was that I decided it should be removed. There's no need for a councillor on that committee anymore.
The Emergency Management Committee, from time to time, the General Manager and sometimes the Mayor are requested to attend the occasional meeting if there is a general emergency, like for example, COVID has stepped up or there's a bushfire or something. But for the most part, the Emergency Management Committee is attended by the Director of Infrastructure.
Okay, the next one is the Zone Bushfire Management Committee requiring 1 councillor.
Twice a year, or is it more often? That's as required, thanks, Councillor Peterson. So it's been in abeyance for a little while, but we'll move in as council implements the outcomes of Floodplain Risk Management Plan. There are also community members on that, so we'll need to re-advertise to get community members onto that committee, as well as technical people from Office Environment and Heritage and BPIA. So it's sort of a technical side of it as council looks at implementing what's come out of the previous strategy plans, but also trying to get that community and councillor level input into the meetings, because in that area it's got to be balanced between the technical and the community impacts around flood management. So mainly around the levies, and that we've got some work to do on both the north and south levy.
So moving on to our Natural Resource Management Committees, there's 2. First is the ERC Floodplain Risk Management Advisory Committee, and that meets as required. And Councillor Madam Mayor, you put your hand up for that, sorry, I'll have it. No, flood management, no, flood zone.
Oh, sorry, I was talking about the floodplain one. I do apologise, councillors. Yeah, look, no, I do fully apologise. Just to go back, so the liaison committee and the bushfire management committee actually meet on the same day. The group will running meetings because councillors come in from other areas. They held here in Deniliquin. So it has been in the past that the same councillor would be on both committees because they're both held on the same day. Again, I do apologise for the discussion.
So there's only one needed on that zone bushfire management committee, so could that either be Pat or myself if
I'd be happy for whilst only one's needed, I'd be happy for two councillors. We've always found both those meetings pretty well running the same. Yeah, I think it's a good thing for the council to have representation.
Okay, so at this stage we have Councillor Fellows appointed. Are we changing that?
One above.
One above, we have Verge and property, and then the zone was yourself. Would you like to change that?
No, yeah, let me go.
Maybe that.
What Giselle was saying, what Mark was saying was that generally they're held on the same day, and the people who attend this one often attend the second one. It doesn't stop you from coming to the second one. Yeah, it might generally be that Councillor Verge and Councillor Fogarty would attend that second one as well if they wish.
So Paul, do you want to do the Murray Zone one? Would you prefer to do that above?
I'm happy just to sit where I am and if you, Pat, want to do this.
But it's just saying that if they're on the same day, and yes, and they sort of coexist virtually, don't they? So it's usually the same person.
All right.
So if you want to, I'll defer to you, but it's up to you or whatever. Yeah.
That's fine.
Which you want to do?
I'll take your spot.
Yeah, sure. Okay, that's fine. You and that. Yeah.
We've got Councillor Fellows and Councillor Fogarty on both of those committees. I think that's
So we are moving on to natural resource management, the floodplain risk committee, Madam Mayor. And then we have we're in need of a councillor for this one, which is the Billabong Yanko Creek system project. We're needing one councillor for that.
Past history has generally been that the mayor from the water committee of Ramjo and would follow up with sitting on the Yanko Creek committee as well. So that's I would recommend that practice knows.
That might have been my bad too, because that's the one I believe Norm previously attended, and I was happy to pick up, where he left off with that, with the link to the Ramjo,
And Councillor Thorns was interested in being on some strategic water committees as well. And the Murray-Darling Association have the regional meetings, and they're quite high level and strategic meetings. With a mixture of different Victorian and New South Wales councils attending. So the mayor's usually on that, but there's also another councillor who would go on that too, so that might be for you to put your hand on there. But we'll get to that in a second. It's related.
The Yanko Creek one is of significance. It is big outside of the Menindee Lakes, potentially the second largest SDL program associated with the water recovery in New South Wales. So it will have a major bearing in the outcome of basin. Yanko Creek regulator programs by chances of reaching the SDL recovery program are negligible. So Diego Creek is absolutely to this district's height of that. So we do need to have representatives on that committee that are cognizant of the issues surrounding that particular project. It's a major project.
Are you interested, Harold?
I wouldn't want to, my view is this is just my opinion, and so please, publicly, I think that is a position that the mayor should represent the community. It is that important. It is, in my view, it is a more important position than the Murray-Darling Association position. The Yanko Creek position is a project associated with the SGLs. So
That's what's proposed at the moment, is that the mayor represents council. Meetings.
Sorry to do that to you, Madam Mayoress.
Thumbs up there.
It is really important.
Okay, so are we, Madam Mayor's remaining on that one, I believe? Okay, moving on to operations committees. We have a key one here, which is the local traffic management committee. Now, the councillor that does elect for this committee is typically nominated as the chair of this committee. So just a heads up on that one. Mark will always be there as well to support. So is there anyone willing to nominate? We don't have.
Yeah, I'd like to, actually, if no one else does, I'd like to. I think, yeah, that would be me.
On a bit of an ad hoc basis, it's great that we can work with sort of trainers, police, Transport for New South Wales, a community rep and a council rep. We have trained them to do a lot by emails and that, because people come from Wagga and that. We do try and have one in-person meeting a year, and that's generally as the leading to the youth stuff. I guess because that's the major traffic event in town. But yeah.
Okay, the Joint Regional Airport Users Group, we have Councillor Connell has nominated, but we are happy for two councillors in this committee. Okay, the next one is the Memorial Park Users Group. It's typically the meetings held twice a year.
Sonny, can I just ask you, was that one of the ones that was introduced with John Rayner that sort of come into leading towards the end of our last council?
I believe there was two with John. One was the original liaison committee, and the other was the committee to review the committee strategic review, the committee for committees, so to speak. No, that one came in, I believe, a little bit earlier to that. So I think when all the works was going on, correct if I'm wrong, Mark, at the Memorial Park, I believe that his group was.
Yeah.
It's been around, I think, it's been around as long as I've been in council, so sort of over 10 years, quite an established committee with the users of the facility, Rovers, DNA, Cricket, the Show Society, there, so, and more just those groups trying to make sure the facility works most efficiently, and they've got that input into council.
Councillor willing to put their hand up for that one, means twice a year, Memorial Park, netball show. Thank you. Okay, and the next one is the Rotary Park Users Group. Again, these are held quarterly, these meetings.
That's actually a new committee that's come in the last 12 months as we've been working on a strategic plan. They did highlight the users of Rotary Park, did highlight Memorial Park and other major recreational facilities do have some sort of body, and so we've been working through to get a Rotary Park users group.
Do you have any takers for the
Rotary Park?
Rotary Park?
At the end, if you've met that, you'll just point and say that.
I'll leave it up to the chair to,
Okay, we'll come back to that one maybe. Okay, starting our users group, we have councillor Connell.
Councillor Butcher's
Well,
expressed an interest in this one.
yeah, Councillor Connell said that he thought someone else should be on it with him, maybe. And
Well, there's two councillors.
I did say that I would be very happy to just do it on my own if there's no objection to that. They're farmers, I'm used to it. I've dealt with them and I can be fairly impartial about that. And so that's, but if Peter, he did put his hand up first, so I'm happy if he wants to, I'll defer, but that's dependent.
We would like two councillors on that one. The other members of it all have two representatives, the agents.
Yeah.
So two balances that out. very
Yeah.
nicely.
Through you, Deputy Mayor.
Throw yourself off standing.
So we have
I'm happy to take it on.
Okay, so the next one is the Māori Arts Users Group. Now this one, it'll be a revolving committee. We are looking at the structure of the committees with the Māori Arts. Councillors? Yep, okay, so.
Councillor Fogarty, is that still the case? You were interested in the multi-arts committee?
Yes, that's fine.
And Councillor Fitz put his hand up as well. Two hands for that.
Who's the second?
Councillor Fogarty, Councillor Peter.
Yep.
Okay, Town Hall Revitalisation Reference Group, we have Madam Mayor and Councillor Fogarty that have put their hand up. You would like to do that. So there's three councillors there. Yep.
Can I just say, being on that one from the get-go, three councillors was just because three councillors were interested, and through no fault of their own and other commitments, two of them didn't attend as often potentially as they'd like to. So whether it's a requirement for three, but it was more, the three that were on it were more, that they was more an interest than a requirement. So if we don't get three, that's okay.
You that are happy to attend?
It'd be good to have three on that one with the continuation that we've got.
The next one is a key one, which is your Audit Risk and Improvement Committee. We need two councillors on that. Currently, we have three that have nominated. We have Councillor Clapham, Councillor Fawns, and Councillor Fellows. Leave that with Councillor Clapham and Councillor Fellows. The General Matters Performance Review, that's all councillors unless council resolves to just, we'll leave that as all councillors. So moving on to Social, Cultural, Heritage Committees. Aboriginal Advisory Committee, we do need two councillors for that one. And Fawns. Southwest Music, typically we have one councillor attending that. They meet, I believe, monthly. We'll leave that one for a little while.
Just for your information, councillors, there's generally a fair bit of officer involvement in that board as well. And the reason why there's a council representative is because we co-fund with a number of other councils the contributions to Southwest Music. I'm sorry, I'm probably thinking more of Southwest Arts, and so apologies. But Southwest Music is I believe the previous council pretty much enjoyed putting on there, and I'll appreciate that. So it's quite something that Denella can be proud of in the region.
We'll come back to that. We've got two to come back to so far. So the Edward River Concert Band and if applicable, that's going to need to go through the committee review that we're going through at the moment. So we'll leave that one. The seniors living precinct, we've put down the need for 4 councillors at the moment. So we need the chair, deputy chair, and 2 ordinary members. So we have mayor.
That should be mayor, deputy mayor, and 2 ordinary members.
So we do have the mayor and so deputy mayor. Yes. Okay, so then we have Councillor Connell and Councillor Fogarty on that committee as well. Yep. Okay, the long.
Look, I'm happy to withdraw from that committee for somebody else to step on.
Another councillor like to step on?
I'm quick on the health aspects, like I can put my knowledge into that one from senior.
Okay,
Sorry, was that a yes from Councillor Peterson? Is he stepping in?
so it will be mayor, deputy mayor, Councillor Peterson and Councillor Connell on the precinct.
Thank you.
Non-party committee, typically there is 1 councillor and at least 1 staff member. So it's an external committee with council membership. So we're looking for 1 to nominate.
Can you explain that a little bit? Tell us a bit about it, please.
That's a long party.
We know what it is, but what's the input?
It's a tourism committee, Mr. Chair. It's a tourism committee that is, there's a lot of work, particularly they've been rolling out across the last year or so, the long comic sort of visitor spaces where you can turn up and use a mobile app and get a sense of what was happening through digital technology. So it's we do fund the long activity, and so it's always good to projects from time to time help to bolster the tourism put into the brief.
If no one else is interested, I don't mind doing that.
Okay, the Australia Day committee is typically the mayor and 1 councillor, and we have the mayor nominated and council fellows. Moving on to the village and hall committees. Blighty Hall, Councillor Peterson has nominated.
I'm going to give the Reuben for Wanganella. The issue with the Reuben is that my cousin's at the leasehold on the top. So probably Wanganella.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
Okay, anyone interested in Blighty? Okay, Berubin?
No one wants to do it.
I'm not sure, and they'll be very different each of the committees, but we can find out for you.
We'll do that. It's probably with it now, staff attendance of these committees has been a little bit haphazard as well. So we'll contact them, say yes, we'll engage with the new council, but also have that staff support as well, because we get a lot of good information through the whole committees. So at least there's some representation from council.
Other committees, are we expected to do every single one of them?
Yeah, good point.
I reckon that I probably will be interested in another one. What we were talking about yesterday.
I would really like to do basically as an old in a primary school. Sorry, just pause for a second. The chair's just left the room to shake hands quickly. But did I read, Councillor Fogarty, you were interested in Conago too?
No, pretty much.
So we've got Blighty, Councillor Fawns, Berubin, Councillor Fawns, so now Conago is, next one is Conago. which is a key committee, given the discussions around the Bob Light Trust. So Councillor Clapham has put his hand up for that one. Yep. Mayor is Councillor Moore. I will just keep moving for the sake of time. Mayor, pretty kind was Councillor Fogarty.
Yes.
Sorry, that's all.
And Wanganala, Councillor Peterson. So the next one is Country Mayors Association, which is the Mayor and the General Manager. Murray Darling Association is the Mayor and Councillor Collins. The Rancho is again the Mayor, Deputy Mayor and General Manager. Delinquent Business Advisory Committee, one councillor is Councillor Peterson has put his hand up. Yes. And the Delinquent Business Chamber, Councillor. So we've still got two committees. One is the Rotary Park and the other is Southwest Music. Just two results. Southwest Music, Councillor. Thank you, Councillor.
Very pleasant group.
Let's do that.
Still in committee of the whole, councillors, just a reminder, so it's generally informal, but we are still streaming. I think we've nailed all of the names. Councillor Clayton had a question.
At the last briefing on Tuesday, I was asked to put together just a dot point thing committee, so I apologise for having not finalised, but I can give you basically what I've come up with and what I thought was appropriate after the direction of that, and I went back and revisited specific plans, and I think there are three specific things that are important, and they are important on the basis that they're taken from community sentiment expressed in those documents. There's a couple of particular. It appears to me that there needs to be a committee that deals with waste management, recycling, tip side. Recycling seems to be one of the most prevalent.
Yeah.
Tend to investigate. It goes all the way through that. The other one that I think is very obvious as well is I think we do need to have a committee that looks specifically at issues that's sort of vein of previous council, natural gas and mine and timber. Natural gas is not an option for any community in the future. Renewables are an option for communities in the future. I think there's one thing I would go back to on the waste one. Our local member is the Minister for the Environment, and she's made recycling and repackaging one of her cornerstone policies in direction of the scope. So I think we've got methods to both of those areas through our city member. The third one is a little bit more esoteric. I think we do need to form possibly a committee to monitor the implementation and continued development of the strategic plan. That would be my three recommendations coming out of
If I can respond, Mr. Chair, I certainly don't disagree with Councillor Clapham. It's quite a very insightful piece of foresight. We will be putting the kicking off of the delivery implementation of the waste management strategy in front of council reasonably soon. That has sort of been in abeyance as we see some of our regional stakeholders are doing this as well. So that can be the opportunity then to establish a committee, a council committee to hear that strategy. Same with the renewable energy zone, we could bring, or the renewable energy aspect of this region. There is a current working group called the Renewable Energy Zone Working Group, run by the state government, but it's also got the federal government implied. So we could certainly put forward a report to the council to help them understand what's going on in that space and seek a nomination of a councillor who wishes to attend those meetings. And the final one, the community strategic plan, I would generally recommend that the monitoring and implementation of the community strategic plan and its sort of sub-plans, which is the development program, and then the operational plan is left to the council to monitor that. And there's generally quarterly updates on the delivery of the operational plan as it proceeds. Council may wish to, as it goes and deliberates on its what its community strategic plan is going to look like. They want to also consider, you know, how much of the community centre should be picked up by council in terms of growth, both economically and population-wise, and the aiming ability for the councillors to not steer what could be simply a strategy around growth within the council, but within the community, sorry. But I would just advise the councillors to wait until that comes up in front of the council, and you can certainly have that that sort of conversation and consideration when that turns up. Obviously, council has to create its community strategic plan on behalf of its community, so there's going to be lots and lots of opportunities for discussion. First discussions around that will happen at the end of this month, 31st of January, 1st of February. We'll have a 2-day workshop with, of course, involvement by all councillors, but also members of the community will be involved in that 2-day workshop as well. Thanks.
Questions? Thank you. I'm not for suggesting. We just I've asked to make an observation, and those are the observations that I agree with.
I'll make a comment. Just, I think waste management and the community strategy is so important. If we do have a committee, it should be a committee of whole council. I think all council will enter into both of those.
So we just need someone to move that we can come back out of the committee of the whole and resume standing order. Councillor Connor. All those in favour? Mr. Mayor, there is a recommendation within the report which says the council discuss and nominate council representatives to be appointed to external and internal committees. Suggest that there could be a mover of that recommendation, but amended to appoint those representatives that were just previously discussed. And we would certainly include that as part of the minutes of the council.
Can we have someone to move that motion?
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fritz. All those in favour? All those against? Great. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you. We'll move right along now to item 9.4. Which is the strategic review. The strategic review committees and implementation of findings. It's on page 51. To be introduced by the services. Thank you.
Okay, Council has undergone an extensive review of its committees and has developed and commenced implementation of a project plan for these recommendations. Part of this is the need to appoint community members to our committees at the commencement of each new council term. So this would include both working with existing community members and also on their reappointment, and also going out to the community to fill any vacancies. Additionally, as attached to the report, we've drafted with consultants that we've been working with on this project some guidelines to use for our committees going forward to help with our governance framework. So we're asking council to adopt the consultant's draft documentation as a basis for future operations of council's community committees, and to review and adopt the revised implementation schedule, which is detailed in the report, to undertake community notification seeking membership from existing and new community members for the consideration by council confirmation. Any questions?
Questions?
I think it's very comprehensive and very needed. But my question is, will we members, the community members of these committees, will they be registered with ASIC or charities? And so my question is, how formal will they have to get involved? Will they be actually board members or just a committee account?
So some are, so it all depends. Some are advisory groups. Some are committees of council, so it depends on the membership. So some are section 3 pipelines are committees of council, formal committees, and then we have user groups that are less formal, etc. There's a framework there that we work through for each of the committees.
No, I was worried that if things became too formal, things would fall down the cracks and things wouldn't get done that were required.
Yes, so just to sort of try to allay concerns with the review, part of the review of the committees was to try to get them, with as less sort of, processes as we had to. So we didn't want to, one, but the committees, and two, the council. So we've gone through that review to try to simplify as much as possible.
Thank you. Do we have a motion? Acceptance?
Move the recommendation.
There is a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Clark. All those for the motion? Does anyone like to speak to the motion? I'll give you the opportunity for the vote. All those in favour of the motion? Yes. Right, we'll move on to page 100 on the agenda, which is item 9.5, councillor staff interaction policy, which will be introduced by the General Manager of the Council.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a policy that seeks to assist councillors in their interaction with operational staff members, and it's generally to give effect to the requirements of the Local Government Act, to make sure that councillors are protected from any inadvertent direction of staff. So essentially, the policy speaks for itself as read, and I nominate a certain number of staff to be able to provide direct advice to councillors, and they are the two directors of the Director of Corporate Services and Director of Infrastructure. The general rule of thumb is that all interactions with the organisation will, for operational matters and also strategic matters, should go through the Office of the General Manager. So it's pretty routine, and it does give effect to those requirements under the Act, which are, tightening up on a yearly basis. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Do we have any questions, councillors, for Mr. Stubb? Any questions? Have a move, please. Seconder. Thank you, Councillor Burge. All those in favour?
Aye.
Yes. Nothing, motion's carried. Item 9.6, which is located on page 106 of Senior Living Precinct, Edinburgh River Village. This will be introduced by the General Manager, Mr. Stone.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a project that has been in the forefront of councillors' minds and also the community minds for some time. The council has worked via a committee to build to develop the project of the City's Living Precinct up to a point where we have full design documentation undertaken. We have a financial model that has been put in front of previous iterations of council and developed over time. And to a point where in October last year, the council finalised the process of tenders for both construction of the dwellings and construction of the civil infrastructure required. The civil infrastructure will be roads, drainage and footpaths, and the dwellings will be approximately 31, not approximately, exactly 31, 2 and 3 bedroom units to be built over time, depending on demand. Fortunately, council ran into a bit of a snag at the conclusion of that process in that the dwellings, the prices for tender had been subject to some significant market growth and a downward trend in supply for building materials. So the prices weren't as had been anticipated for the construction of dwellings, and also the infrastructure tender was, we received one tender which was complying within what part of what we requested, but there was other parts that had not been submitted for. Essentially, it was for telecommunication services and civil infrastructure, and the tender that was put forward was for the just the civil infrastructure itself. So as a result, council resolved in October last year to not accept any of the tenders and to go out to tender again. In the meantime, since then, we obviously had a council election. We have a new council, and there's been some delay in terms of trying to get this back in front of the council, and to the point that the market is quite volatile at the moment, particularly around building materials. We have had some initial discussions with a number of the submitters to tenders, and I suppose we've had different responses on those. What we're suggesting, though, or we're recommending to the council is that we proceed with developing up the formal budget for the first stage, which is for 6 dwellings and the infrastructure for the 12 dwellings. Because we also have a $1 million grant from the Murray-Darling Basin Authority to be completed, for that stage to be completed by May. So we're very much running forward with an ever-increasing price point with the market as it is, and a deadline to deliver the 6 dwellings. So therefore we have, I suppose, changed our view that we should seek to understand whether those prices will be honoured by some of those tenderers, to see if we can not negotiate with them to deliver the first stage, and also to go back to the tenderers for the civil infrastructure and see if we can't commence construction following a negotiation around contract points. So if I can just pull up the recommendation. So the recommendation is that council note the project documentation has been reviewed in accordance with the resolutions of council back in October. But what we are recommending is that we rescind the remainder of resolution 2021/173 to not accept tenders submitted for the contract C2021/08, City's Living Precinct dwelling construction. Also would like to add a further point to those to that recommendation that does the same thing for the infrastructure contract. So there's to rescind the remainder of Resolution 2021-174 to not accept tenders submitted for 2021/09 contract Seniors Living Precinct infrastructure. And for both of those matters, delegate to the General Manager the authority to commence negotiation with those submitters to determine prices for construction of both the infrastructure and the 6 dwellings. Also asking council to agree, as they've seen some financial modelling, receive to set the entry price for residents of dwellings at cost based on construction costs of the full development averaged over each unit, estimated to be at this stage at about $428,000 per unit on average as an entry price. To set the weekly contribution for residency of dwellings at $130 per week per dwelling. To set the deferred management fee at 5% per annum for a maximum of 7 years. And to note that the unit floor plans are set by the planning process, so individual design entry prices will be established during the sales process. So the figure that I've given there, 428,000, is an average price, but it will depend on which designs residents want as to determine what the full price of construction for the 6 units in stage 1. To also adopt the draft Retirement Village contract for residents as contained in attachment 1 to the report, and to delegate to the General Manager the development of other governance documents, and also to receive a further report following negotiations with these contractors, these potential submitters, to resolve to accept those contracts or otherwise, and to adopt a formal budget for the first stage of construction of the village. I'm happy to take any questions. That was fairly long-winded, and it's quite a complex little project. So, yeah, happy to take any questions through you, Mr. Chair. Councillor Bird. Thank you.
Just ask, is it possible due to COVID restrictions and delay of materials to ask for a deferral for that timeline on the $1 million grant? Is that possible?
Thanks through Mr. Chair and Councillor Bird's very good question. Something I sort of glossed over. Look, there is room for negotiation on all grants, and this being a federal government grant, we've been in continual contact, very regular contact with the members of that department who are managing that. There is quite a strong desire by them to not miss the May deadline. But as usual, there is always force majeure. There's always these issues that crop up with projects that are beyond anybody's control. So within reason, there is a scope to negotiate on those milestones. But if we haven't commenced by May, there may be a bit of a different conversation than if we had given it a good crack and started construction, we just hadn't finished it by May. So that's essentially the rule of thumb there with the grants.
Thank you.
Mr. Deputy Mayor, through you to the GM, if the recommendation is adopted by council, when would you expect to come back to council with an update?
Yeah, we would do our darndest through Mr. Chair to get it back in February, because we're very conscious of the speediness of this decision that needs to be made. I know there is a number of members of the community who have expressed interest in this project, who are wanting to get something moving. But at the same time, council needs to be very prudent around ensuring that it's not cutting corners around costs and so forth. And given the state of the market at the moment, there's quite a lot of uncertainty, even indications that in February the prices may go up again for building construction materials and so forth. So in a sense, we're kind of chasing our tail as a council. The prices are going up, and the longer we leave the decision to start moving, the more expensive it's going to be for the end user. That being said, there is still scope to say maybe this is unaffordable, we need to think this through again. I'd recommend that that's sort of the last resort, but it is still an option that's on the table for the council. But hence why, going back to the original tenderers in October, November, to just see, are they prepared to enter into negotiations around the prices so we can get some certainty on those prices, would be the most prudent form of action. If we don't reach an agreement, then it may be a different discussion happening back in February.
Councillor Clement.
Thank you. Through the chair for Deputy Mayor. Preempting this on the basis of supporting the process, and I think it's incumbent on council for to proceed. What I would like to understand is a little bit as to the magnitude of the loss if it wasn't to meet its expectations. And the idea of creating a loss does not worry me as particularly. The need to get the project going is far more important than trying to work out exactly how it's all of these costs are going to fit. So what I'm asking is, I mentioned it at the briefing before, the structure under which it is undertaken that mitigates the risk, the level of the loss if everything doesn't go according to plan. And given the current council's current lack of debt and its situation, the council probably is in a position where it can afford to take a level of financial risk with interest rates as low as where they are as well. So I'm not for one moment suggesting that we go ahead on the basis of being prudent, have to be prudent. I'm not fearful of it not meeting all of the expectations, and it is entirely inappropriate to suggest that we would even get anywhere near getting it right, given all of the circumstances that we're talking about. So at the next meeting, I would like to see a risk analysis of it that details relative to the best of your ability how far we may go down and go through it. If it just doesn't work. We want it to work. We have to be mindful that not everything goes. So, I have support, just need to know where we sit with the council.
Thank you, Councillor.
Is that a question?
No, it's good answer to statement.
Okay, so in terms of the magnitude of loss, if I can, Mr. Chair, just to provide particularly the community and the councillors a level of sort of clarity around this. We have been working on a number of assumptions, and there's so many moving parts, for want of a better term, that will dictate how sustainable this is as a development. The committee and the prior council very much took the view to not make this a loss-making exercise, that it would be sustainable and essentially pay for itself over time. At the same time, they didn't want to burden the ratepayer any further with something that did not make a profit or did not at least break even. And at the same time, they didn't want to think there's a balance there around if there is any profit to be made, that it's not sort of taken advantage of the elderly market. So it's a balancing act, and it's all dependent. The prices you charge a resident, essentially, the strategy that's been adopted is that the prices we charge the resident are essentially our costs. An apportioned cost of the infrastructure charges against each dwelling and the cost to construct the dwellings. And when the deferred management fee comes back in, when the buildings change over hands, that is when council can replenish its stocks and pay back any borrowings it's used to facilitate this development. In the practical order, there will be a need for council to borrow funds to undertake this initiative, but they are factored into the operational costs and servicing of the loan and so forth in that matter. The real uncertainty here is how much are these going to cost to build? We're working on a model basis, not here a formal budget, because we haven't had those conversations that got pretty firm prices, and that's in a pretty volatile environment. The original, when we were looking at this about 12 months ago, we were thinking the average price entry point for a dwelling was about 350,000. Now we've just realised that that is underdone because of the market conditions, and 430 is about the point where we have and basically asked council to resolve that is, the community knows that that's an average price here. Since November though, those prices could have gone up even more, which why we need to go back to those submitters and ask how they're travelling. So we just need to get some clarity around the costs, and of course that then goes back to those people who were interested initially at an understanding of around 350,000. Are they still interested at that increased price, and who is still interested? So it's a bit of a moving feast. With the models we've seen, we can see that council operationally will be carrying a loss for about 10 years. And depending on how fast we can build and get people into the new dwellings, we see that between 4 to 5 years from a capital point of view, that we would reclaim our costs from a capital point of view. So it wouldn't seem to be breaking even until about 10 years' time. So hopefully that answers the question around quantification of loss or sustainability.
Councillor Putnam.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, it's a pretty simple thing. You know, they're 420, they're 430 at the moment. If they go up 20%, they're going to be roughly 520,000. 520,000 puts them out of the range, and we've got to meet the market at 400. We're going to take a loss of 120 on each unit, and we just need to know where that number's sort of going to tumble out. I mean, they're not going to be built for $430,000 today. I think everybody around here accepts that. We've got to accept this.
So point of order, Mr. Mayor. We are asking questions, we're having a discussion. If with my leave of the Deputy Mayor, I would like to move the recommendation that we can then discuss this matter.
So you'll move to the recommendation.
Yes.
Second,
Yeah.
All right. Councillor Moore. Thank you.
Thank you, I appreciate that. And that's all my comment is. I just need to know where that possibly will tumble out. And that's fine.
And just to be clear, in terms of answering your question, Councillor Putnam, it is not proposed at any point by the officers at this stage that council would incur a loss and therefore subsidise the cost of the building and the cost of the infrastructure would be apportioned to be to add up to the entry price of the for the participants. At some point, though, as pointed out, it becomes, is it affordable for the average person in Edward River? So that's the thing that councillors need to weigh up. If there is some proposal that council would like to, for want of a better term, carry the difference between what is the preferred price and what the markets can sustain and the cost, then that cost will be borne by the ratepayer. And it's just about whether that is palatable to the whole council and to the community. But for the moment, we are not recommending that there is any subsidisation of prices for the markets.
We've got two issues on this, which is your infrastructure as well as the buildings. The buildings are in a holding pattern looking to re-tender. We have within council our own crew that could build the roads and the infrastructure in place, yes. Are we able to get a move on with that one so that we have the entire road infrastructure in place, so that we have the tenders confirmed for the buildings of the unit, they can just commence? We're not in a holding pattern putting that on and on, we risk losing this money from by the end of the start of May.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Pearson, for the question. We have the resources and technical expertise to undertake that work. Generally, it is road work and water supply. That is very much within council's capabilities. At this point in time, council's own internal resources are fully committed to completing the 21-22 capital works program. So, in order for council to redirect those resources to another project, the seniors living project would require taking those resources away from current commitments, and especially in terms of road works, it would be the significant commitments that council have made. So ultimately, that is an operational question of how this work is delivered. Up to date, we've made the operational decision that we will deliver it through the use of external contractors. Depending on how the project develops, that can be revisited, but very much stress that sort of decision would have ramifications in other areas, but they will be ones that we would.
So question, Mr. Dalzell. What would be the time frame if you did use external contractors? How busy are they at the moment?
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. As across the board, they're very busy. So at this point in time, for background, council has 2 road work contracts already out there waiting to commence. We have another one being advertised at the moment, and we'll be looking at least one more being done. So really, as an organisation, we're already flooding the market to a point around contractors.
Including seniors.
That's not including seniors living. So we do have very good local contractors. We have had contractors from the region who have shown interest in projects within the River Council, and we're trying to encourage that. In terms of the senior living contract, we did receive a submission through that first process, and we will be going back to that contract. Feel that would have a contractor available to negotiate. It may impact other work, but we would I feel more confident in working with contractors than bringing council's own internal resources into that space to try and exhaust absolutely everything we could in terms of contractors before times.
Thank you. So putting the cart before the horse, so can you start with the buildings before the road infrastructure goes in? Or is there like a chronological sequence when it comes to building these projects?
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. One of the benefits of the site is that whilst it's not great having them both working at the same time, I think that would be achievable given that it's a nice open site. So you have what is essentially the road reserve where they're working in, and you would have the building to the side of that. It would require a fair bit of coordination between different groups, but our experience is working with local contractors. One of the big benefits of that is that we have great relationships with them and are able to do sort of work together and benefits and that. So yeah, definitely as the general manager noted before, the timeframes and once agreements will be put in place, we will be getting them started and progressing as quickly.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
Yes, we have moved Councillor Connell, seconded by Councillor Moore.
Any speakers?
Do we have any speakers who would like to speak, or who wish to speak either for the recommendation or proposal information?
It's already on the table.
It's already on the table.
Yeah, so councillor Connell and councillor Moore, moved and second. So we've just got the speakers for this motion, which is the recommendation from.
Any speakers to a motion? Yes. Yes.
They're on the screen.
Oh, sorry. Councillor Fogarty, Lady Maris.
What was the question? What was the question again?
Just speakers for or against the motion, councillor Fogarty.
No, don't wish to speak either for or against. No.
Lady Maris. No, all good.
The motion.
I'd like to motion. All those in favour? All those against? One. Carried. Let's move on to item 9.10, which is the operations progress report. Oh, sorry, 9.9, I jumped the gun here. It's the major projects progress report. This will be introduced by the Edward River Council Director of Infrastructure, Mr. Delgado.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. So as part of regular reporting to council, we provide a major projects progress report providing every month. This report focuses on green funding, and as councillors will see on the first page of the report, over the well, since the amalgamation 5 years ago, council has received over $46 million in funding. We still have, and in terms of the capital works program for this year, you know, we still have around $30 million to deliver. So in this area, there's still a significant amount of work for council to do. The report includes the funding sources. It also includes just some discussion information around the major projects within the program, and as an attachment to the report, that includes the reporting on each of the programs, broken up by funding source. So there are some projects there, especially with the town hall, that covers multiple funding sources. We run through there a traffic light system in terms of progress and status of the reports, green, yellow, red. So green, progressing well. Yellow is progressing. You know, there are just some areas that the council needs to focus on, or things that may impact the delivery of the program, and then red being some more major sort of issues around the project, and you know, need to progress it. In terms of the capital works in general, as part of the councillor induction, it is we will provide a more detailed briefing about projects and where the status and forward projects as well. So they are a separate council briefing. So this report, standard report has been provided to council, and the recommendation is that the report is received by council. Any further questions?
Does anyone have any questions on the report? No? Does anyone wish to move either the recommendation or a different motion? Could I have a mover, please? Thank you, Councillor Moore. And a seconder? Councillor Ford. We have a vote on that, please. All those in favour? No. All those against? No. Carried. Thank you. Moving on to 9.10. Again, Mr. Dalzell, who will be introducing the operations progress report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy Mayor. So again, one of the regular reports provided for councillors' information is the operations section report. So a major part of the infrastructure department, and very similar as the development services report provided earlier. The report highlights activities that council staff have been undertaken, mainly in the maintenance area, as there's other reporting that does capital works, but where council's own resources have been undertaking capital works, it will be highlighted in the report. Breaks down with the roads sections, also with water and sewer and parks and gardens sections. So it's provided to give councillors information on the day-to-day business of council, council staff, what's been completed, current work, and also what the staff are looking at doing in the coming months. So a bit of forecasting on what's upcoming. And I think Mr. Desmond.
Does anyone have any questions on the development report?
I'll move the recommendation.
I'll second the recommendation.
Thank you. Anyone wish to speak? Motion? No? I'll put the motion forward to council. All those in favour? All those against? Carried. Thank you, council. We'll move on to item number 10, questions with notice. Mr. Stone, do you have any questions on notice?
No, Mr. Mayor, no. Mr. Chair, sorry, no questions on notice from the public.
Thank you.
And also item 11, there's no 11. Questions without notice?
No.
So, can I put a question with that?
Yes.
Yeah, that's proved wrong.
You were quick, didn't you? I would be interested, just, and I mean, it's a bit late now, we've already passed the motion on the feedlot, but certainly as a council, I'd be very interested in going that way. Just so we can say we have been out there and have the due diligence. That could be organised.
Through Mr. Chair, I'll take the question on notice. Absolutely, I think the company is very keen to invite council to have a look through. And it's probably appropriate given now that the decision has been made that councillors we arrange a time for you to come out and have a look at the feedlot. Obviously, it might be a couple of weeks while we try to arrange some time, but certainly can do.
Thank you, Mr. Stone. No other questions without thought? Thank you, councillor.
Just with the times for being here, Tuesdays we've agreed to for our council meetings starting at 9 AM. And then we'll have briefings a couple of other times to get us up to speed. Our briefing times we have listed as 9 to 12. We're able to keep to that time, and then on our meeting days, if we finish early, we can have an additional briefing after that. So we're not having multiple days. For those of us that because we're all working, we're not having to take anything away from these days. We've actually got set times to be here, we can block that out to keep them.
Mr. Stone, would you like to respond?
Certainly, Mr. Chair. Very good question, and it is often a difficult balancing act to strike the balance around how often councillors are here and for how long. Council has resolved to hold meetings on the third Tuesday of every month, and they generally go from 9 to 12. Sometimes they're a little bit fluid and may finish early, like we're about to finish now, 40 minutes before 12 o'clock. And there's always an opportunity then, after the meeting is finished, for councillors to raise items that they may wish to understand in a more informal setting. And of course, there's this opportunity during the formal meeting to ask questions in the public. As a general rule, the two council briefings that are scheduled in the other parts of the month on Tuesdays, the first and second Tuesdays, will generally go till 12 o'clock, but they may go longer. But no one is, sort of forced or required to be here. There's no sort of breach of any act if you don't attend. There's no need to, of course, we'd encourage you to put apologies in, but there's no need to put in a leave of absence because it's not a formal meeting, it's simply an information sharing session. So, but very much a commitment that you'll finish by 12 for the briefing sessions as well. But if any council wishes to leave before more commitments or so forth, they certainly can. We're very open, myself and the executive are very open to catch up with you at a later time when it suits you to go over those items that we discussed in the meeting.
Being conscious of time, we'll keep moving along. Are there any confidential matters? Well, that's basically it for today, councillors.
No. Look, I have a question without notice, Mr. Chair. As everyone would note from the major projects report, we do have a lot of projects on the go. And as a result, we've had a significant number of project managers engaged both on a full-time, part-time and contract basis. I'm wondering if a report could come back to council for the next meeting where, and I are also of the understanding that some of those project managers from Queensland were to cease their work in December. I'm just wondering, can a report come back to the next council meeting of where each of those project managers are up to and what's been the costing for those project managers?
Thank you, Councillor Fogarty.
Through Mr. Chair. Yes, look, we had intended actually to provide a briefing on the whole capital works program, including major projects, to one of the, in the next, I think on the 8th of February. So we're working on that report at the moment. So it's very, we can bring a report back to the council around the delivery of the capital works program, including major projects. And we can certainly let councillors know where we need to, and what the cost of overall project management is on that capital program. So the short answer is yes, we can bring one up in February, but we fully intended to brief the councillors in a briefing session on the 8th of February before that meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fogarty. Confidential matters, sorry, Councillor. Could you just speak up a little bit? Yeah, the girls are having trouble here.
Sorry, my apologies.
Councillor.
Just a question without notices, again, it's just trying to understand. We approved the DA for the Canadian feedlot today. I presume there's a process by which that may be appealed. If everything continues to flow the way it should do, when would they be able to theoretically sort of commence work on that project?
Thank you. Councillor Clapham.
Through you, Mr. Deputy Mayor, thank you, Councillor Clapham. So this comes back to the DA planning process in general. So today, Council has approved the development application. The operators of the feedlot now have development approval to proceed with the extension. The next part of the development process is what's called the construction certificate. So they've really got approval to say they can do it. Now they need to get approval on what they're actually going to do. So there's still more information that they'll need to provide to EPA, to water, and also to council to do that. So they definitely can't walk away from today and start constructing. There's still steps they need to do. Generally, in terms, once they receive the approval, they'll receive it in a couple of days. It's usually 1 to 2 days for the paperwork, but they can then keep working on it. It is up to anyone who would want to lodge any appeals to do that. But upon getting a development approval, doesn't have to wait for there's any appeals made. The applicant developer will be notified. So we fully expect now with development approval, or they'll now go through all the detailed work towards getting the construction certificates and license.
Further questions? Well, I'd like to wrap up today's council meeting. Special thank you to council executive for their concise reports. General Manager, Mr. Stone, for whispering little sweet nothings into my ear, helping me on my way. And so I do appreciate that. Thank you. And the councillors themselves, I've said it before, it's an eclectic group of individuals, and I really have welcomed the robust discussion today, and everybody's input. I think it's a very special group we've got, and I think there's big things in front of us. It's been a huge day. So yeah, thank you for everybody's time. Thank you to Councillor Fogarty, and best wishes for Richard from all of us. Thank you to Lady Mary Pitts. No doubt she'll be at OSO next week. I'd like to declare the meeting closed at 11:30. Thank you. Thank you. Still on.